employed?
No, I'm retired.
What in 2022 were you employed?
Yes, I was a medical examiner at the Utah Office of the Medical Examiner.
There's a term, forensic pathologist. Is that what the capacity you were serving in?
That's correct.
What is a forensic pathologist?
So a pathologist is a medical doctor who has gone through all of the medical training and then done residency in pathology. For a forensic pathologist, we do additional training in forensic pathology specifically, and then we sit for boards and take all of our board certifications for both pathology and forensic pathology.
I see. So when you receive a body, just generally speaking, into the OME, what is the procedure? What happens?
So basically, I'll start at the scene because an investigator will be at the scene, and then the body at that point will get sealed in a body bag that has a seal identification number on it, goes through the zipper pull so that it can't be tampered with while it's being transferred from the scene to the office. Once it gets to the office, then it's brought in and documented by a morgue clerk who's going to put various information into the computer, identifying information and stuff. We used to actually open the body bag at that time and take an identification photo, and then the body would go into the cooler. But I believe we changed our policy though, so that at the time that this event was going on, the body bag was still sealed when it went into the cooler, and it wasn't unsealed until we would start the autopsy examination.
I see. So did you perform an autopsy on the body of a person named Eric Richins on March 5th of 2022?
I did.
Do you recall about what time that began?
I don't have any paperwork with me, but it was around 7:30 in the morning.
I see. You very briefly went into your education. Could you give us a brief description of your education to become a forensic pathologist?
Sure. So medical training is a 4-year degree. I specifically went to an osteopathic school, but whether it's an osteopathic or an allopathic school, it's the same type of training. So I did my medical school at Des Moines University in Iowa. Then I went on to do my pathology residency training at Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. So that's typically either a 3-year or 4-year program, depending on what you're doing. For me, because I was going into forensic pathology, I opted to do 3 years of pathology and then 2 years of forensic pathology training to take care of all of my residency and fellowship training.
I see. So after all your training, where did you go next?
So I did my fellowship. The first year of my fellowship was at King County Medical Examiner's Office in Seattle. And then at that point, I still had 1 more year of training that I needed to do, but I got hired on at the Medical Examiner's Office in Salt Lake City. And so we coordinated so that my first year at the office would also count as my 2nd year of forensic pathology training.
I see. Did you stay on then after that year?
I did.
Okay. How long did you serve then the Utah Medical Examiner?
So I started my employment there in July of 2009, and I retired January 1st of 2023.
That 2009 is including that year of
Training, yes.
Yes. Okay. Are you, or at the time, were you certified by any certifying board?
Yes, so I was certified in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology by the Board of Pathology.
Were you a member of any professional organizations?
Over the years, I've been a member of a variety of pathology-related and forensic pathology organizations, including the National Association of Medical Examiners, as well as the American Society of Clinical Pathology.
Have you ever testified as an expert in forensic pathology?
Multiple times.
Okay. Do you have a ballpark figure for how many times?
You know, I don't have my case log anymore, so a lot of it was preliminary hearings for various cases, and then as well as doing like other types of cases. So maybe about between 75 and 100 times for all of my testifying.
When you do an autopsy, first of all, what is an autopsy, I guess?
So it's an external and internal examination of the body. So we're basically looking for why the person died. We do an external examination describing any unique features of the body. In a forensic autopsy, we also describe like the clothing, any identifying features like the color of the eyes, any tattoos, anything like that, because we need to know who the person is as well as why they died. So all of those items get documented. Additionally, any like scars or anything like that to show any prior medical procedures or injuries. Any injuries that they might have sustained, whether it's bruising or gunshot wound or anything like that. And then once all of the external items are documented, then we start on the internal examination. So we'll do a Y-shaped incision on the chest. Skin gets reflected as well as the fat and muscle. And then we can see the rib cage. The rib cage will get removed. Then we're looking at all of the organs in the chest and abdomen. So those all get examined in the body, and then they're removed and weighed to see if they look normal and whether they're of normal weight or within range of normal weight. And then we do the same thing with the head. We'll make an incision across the top of the head, reflect the scalp, and cut the skull off so that we can look at the brain in place and then remove the brain and look at it out on the table and weigh it. Everything is sliced so that we can make sure there's no natural disease on the inside that would explain why they're dead. Like if a person had a stroke, you might see that in their brain. If they had a heart attack, we might see a blood clot in their heart, or there might be muscle deterioration. So a lot of different things that we can examine and document to explain why the person is dead. We also draw different blood samples, urine sample, gastric contents. We're looking at all of that so that A, we can see what it looks like, and B, so then we can retain it for toxicology purposes.
I see. So you go through, it sounds like you go through these methodically, like system by bodily system.
Yes.
Okay. Is that the standard in your field?
It is.
You mentioned also that you take samples, blood, gastric, etc. Do you always analyze those, or is that just by case by case?
Some items are case by case. We'll routinely do toxicology analysis on blood and vitreous fluid. So that allows us to screen for common things, and then we can determine whether an expanded panel is needed or other testing. Since this case was during the COVID era, pretty much everybody was getting swabs so that COVID PCR could be done. And then there's other microbiological cultures that might be performed on a case-by-case basis, as well as other types of laboratory testing for, say, like potassium level or something like that. So it depends on why we think the person might have died to answer those questions.
Do those samples get sent out to other labs, or are they examined internally at the medical examiner's office?
They get sent out to other laboratories.
I see. You talk now about generally the procedure. Is that what you followed in this case?
Yes.
Okay. With identification, you mentioned right off the bat is an important thing. Is that what you did in this case?
Yes. So obviously at the scene, because he was at his residence, his wife was able to identify him. But we also look at photographic identification, meaning driver's license, and we can compare that to the individual to make sure that they look like their photo. So that's if it's a case where there's additional identification needed, because maybe we don't know who they are and they don't have any identification with them, then we can do fingerprint analysis, or we have to go further, we can do DNA analysis.
But you didn't have to in this case.
No.
So do you have a worksheet or something that you use as you go along and write information, such as the time and the seal number and all those things?
Yes, there's an autopsy worksheet.
Okay. Can I show to the witness State's Exhibit 10-4? Do you see that up there?
Yes.
Could you, do you recognize it?
So it's a body diagram
Okay.
showing notes that I made during the autopsy.
Okay, and is it a true and accurate copy of that worksheet?
Yes.
State would offer State's Exhibit 10-4.
Johnson. No objection.
10-4 is admitted.
Would ask to publish that.
There you are.
Okay, there's one thing I wanted to have you identify. Is have you written down the tag number from the seal?
Yes, I have.
And what's that number?
It's 0002713.
Okay. Okay. Let's move on then to the external exam. What did you notice or anything? We can take 10. I don't think that 10-4 is necessary.
So basically, he had evidence that he had received CPR. He had an endotracheal tube in his mouth. He had needles in both shoulders in order for IV fluid to be submitted. He also had defibrillator pads that were on him. There was really no evidence of injury. EKG pads were also present, and I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, was there blood present externally on his face?
There was.
Can you explain that?
So, in cases of potential drug overdose, it is not unusual for opiate overdoses specifically to have pulmonary edema. So you've got foaming of the mouth coming from the lungs. And then in addition to that, then when you're receiving CPR and you have that intrathoracic pressure that every time a compression is made, that's contributing to the lung injury. And so it's not unusual to have blood seeping out with that fluid from just the vasculature of the lungs. But in addition, when somebody gets intubated, there's a risk that they might get mouth injury or they might get other injury just when the tube is being inserted. And so with that, every time you're doing a compression, you've got potentially blood-tinged fluid that's spurting out.
I see. Did you see any evidence of injury that contributed to death during your external examination?
No.
Okay. Let's move on then to your internal examination. What is the first thing that you look at?
Well, the first thing I looked at were the ribs. He had rib fractures on the left side, on the front. I believe it was ribs 4 and 5 were fractured, which was most likely from CPR.
I see.
And then you remove the chest plate and you're looking at the heart and lungs.
Well, let's take a look then. Let's go down system by system. Did you lay those out system by system in a report that you subsequently produced?
I did.
Okay. Cardiovascular system. There's a mention here of 50% occlusion. Could you tell the jury a little bit about what that means?
So it just means that he had the beginning stages of coronary artery disease, so that the lumen of the vessels in his heart were thickened. It's usually not thought to be significant until they're at least 75% occluded or more, and this is a common finding in adult males in general, and then adult women as they also age. There was no indication of any kind of coronary artery thrombus to indicate that he had a blood clot form in his heart and cause a heart attack. And so there was no damage to the heart muscle. The heart was within normal range for weight.
Okay. So that was not a cause of death?
No.
Okay. Respiratory system, you noted trachea, bronchi, foam present.
Correct.
I think you've said that was probably from CPR.
So it's probably originated from his fentanyl overdose.
I see. Okay.
CPR can also cause pulmonary edema, but since he had no return of circulation during this CPR process, the majority of that fluid and that foam probably originated from the drug overdose, but CPR can still contribute to it.
I see. Okay. Pleural surface small tan white nodules.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So on the surface of his lungs, he had these little tiny white nodules all over, which are little granulomas. I looked at them. So in addition to removing all of the organs, I also did histologic examination on the main organs, which means I took a little piece of tissue so that it could then be cut very thinly and then stained and looked at under the microscope.
And did you look under the microscope at these?
I did.
Okay.
And so you can visually see them on the lungs just looking at them grossly. They were very obvious. And they're just little small granulomas that were coating the surface of the lungs.
I see. Is there some significance in this case about those?
There is, because his history, his work employment history, he was a stonemason. And so all of that dust that's created when you're cutting either brick or blocks, you can inhale it if you're not wearing a respirator or a mask, and then that goes into your lungs, and your body tries to protect itself by sequestering that stuff off, and so then these little granulomas form.
I see. Did that contribute to his death?
I don't believe it did. He had the granulomas present. He also had a small amount of pleural fluid present associated with these, but it wasn't significant enough. There wasn't like scar tissue that it was in his lungs that was preventing him from breathing or anything like that. So I felt like it did not contribute to his death.
I see. Did you note anything about his liver and biliary system, biliary?
From my recollection, the liver was normal. There was no surprises there.
Okay. What did you note, if anything, about the digestive system?
Again, I don't have any notes in front of me, but he had about 700 milliliters of pink fluid that also had like food particles in it that were partially digested. Some of that was retained and saved for toxicology purposes.
Did you have a discussion with Brianna Peterson from NMS about the volume that you measured from the gastric?
I may have, I don't recollect it.
I see. Do you have any idea about the pink coloration? Was that from anything that you're aware of, or
No.
is it okay? Urogenital system.
Okay.
Was there anything? Did you know? anything?
Kidneys looked fine. Bladder looked fine. The genitalia all looked normal within limits. So
Reticuloendothelial system.
so that's referring to more like your organs, like the spleen or lymph nodes, things that have to do with immune response. And he did have. So when you have those types of granulomas in the lungs, it's not unusual for the lymph nodes surrounding the lungs to also have the same kind of stuff in them and also have granuloma formation. And I did see that when I did histology on those lymph nodes in that area.
I see.
Otherwise, the spleen and everything looked normal.
Okay. Endocrine system. Was there anything that you documented?
No.
Excuse me. And musculoskeletal system. Anything?
Other than the rib fractures, it was all normal.
I see. Now you mentioned you sent some samples out to histology. Did you receive those things back and look under the microscope yourself later?
I did. For part of them I did. Part of them were examined, I guess, at the state lab. So let me clarify. So we did microbiology testing of the lungs, which you just collect a swab. And so each lung was swabbed and sent to the lab. We had that tested for bacterial infection as well as fungal infection and then TB infection. And that was significant because we had all of these granulomas in the lungs, as well as he'd recently had a history of having COVID. And so just to confirm that there was no active infection going on that I could document that was causing those granulomas, like TB, for example, or any kind of fungal infection, all to explain what was going on in the lungs. And the only thing that I saw, again, was the granulomas that were due to his work history. In addition, I did special stains to confirm that there were no fungal elements present and that there were no significant changes to the lung tissue, as well as the heart and the liver and the kidneys. I did see the granulomas
Okay.
in the lungs and those lymph nodes.
So absolutely no fungal infection in the lungs?
No. And to clarify, that was not by culture, that was only by looking at the stain.
Okay.
So
Did you, we'll get to that, I guess, in just a minute. I guess with histology, you also sent out liver samples, epiglottis, or was this just part of your internal exam? Maybe I mixed that up.
I think I did submit a section of the epiglottis, and I'm not sure whether that was specifically because he had a history of allergies that was reported, and just to confirm that there was no evidence of anaphylaxis.
And was there?
The tissue was denuded, but I did not see any evidence of histamine release granules that were in the tissue itself, so I can't. It did not appear that anaphylaxis was an issue.
Did you send out samples or send out samples to the health department for disease and fungal cultures?
So I did for the bacterial cultures, I did for the TB stain or the Mycobacterium stain, and yeah, I don't have the autopsy report in front of me, so I can't answer a lot of this stuff.
Would it
I'm
be
sorry.
helpful to look at your report?
It would be, yes.
They approach the witness.
Of course.
Does that look familiar to you?
Yes, this is the report that was generated by myself after the autopsy examination was performed on Mr. Richins.
Can you find the portion of your report where you're talking about disease, the samples that you sent to the public health lab?
So for the public health lab, we did an Auramine O stain, which is a special stain that they do looking for acid-fast bacteria, and that's to help rule out tuberculosis, which again would be something that would cause that type of granuloma pattern on the lungs. And that was negative as reported by them because they observed it. I did not look at that particular slide. In addition, we did bacterial cultures, again on the right and left lung. Those grew up multiple organisms, and when I see that, usually what it means is it's just normal flora from the respiratory tree, and then as you are dead, these organisms just continue to grow inside your body, and so you will see more of them show up with these postmortem cultures. If the person was dead from a specific bacterial infection, say like streptococcal pneumonia or something like that, you should predominantly just see the streptococcal bacteria and not all of this other stuff quite as broadly. So that just looked like postmortem change. And then we did a blood bacterial culture, which also, it came back no growth, and so there was no evidence of any kind of sepsis. The COVID swab for SARS-CoV-2, which is the organism name, that was positive. So he did test positive for COVID, And my understanding is that he had been sick with COVID-like symptoms, more of like a cold, recently prior to his death. But at
Okay.
the time of autopsy, he did not show any evidence of like pneumonia that we would normally see for someone who's dying from COVID.
Your Honor, there's a good little portion left. I wanted to know, based on time, if this was, could we break and return to Dr. Ulmer, or would it be,
Any objection, Mr. Ramos?
No, that, everybody would like that.
Okay. I need you to sit tight for just a moment, if you don't mind. Folks, let's take a lunch break. We have lunch for you. It's 12:10. Why don't we come back at 12:45? Is that agreeable, counsel?
it is to the state?
Judge, if I may, we could get up just a little bit longer, just give the issue that we're dealing with the expert.
No problem.
Is that okay?
1 o'clock?
I'll take